All right, welcome Mr. Prisky and Mr. Graves' Basic Algebra D class. We're going to be going through Unit 14 from the beginning. This is Mr. Graves' Unit 14, but in talking with Mr. Prisky, we are pretty similar spots, so we just wanted to create our own content and build these questions out for Edpuzzle. So you're hearing it right from us, and it's not just random people on YouTube, but you're getting instruction from your teachers. So we'll be working together to do that, starting with 14.1. So by the end of this lesson, you'll be reminded how to find the vertex from standard form. Standard form is when we are working with a quadratic that has a squared plus b squared, or plus a, sorry, let me back that up a little bit. Standard form looks like number one in all of these, where we have a x squared plus bx plus c. A, b, and c are all correspond with number values here. So in this one, a is 1, b is 2, and c is 3. And we do include the sign. So that's positive 1, positive 2, and positive 3. So we're going to take some time just to go through and label these and look at what is our a value, what is our b value, and what is our c value. We need to be really good at identifying those things so that we can use them to plug into some formulas and some of those different things there. So again, we're working with A, B, and C. And what is our A value? We should get -1. Our B value is -2, and our C value is +1. Color coordinate those. That's how I found those. Okay, so we have A equals, B equals, C equals. So A is 2. What is B? We should have -4. And C is -2. That's where we're getting those, A, B, and C. Really simple. So in this one, A is -2, B is 4, C is -6. Another way to label these, we could write it above. A is -1, B is 2, C is -2. And you'll see me writing them above in the upcoming problems. Doesn't matter how big the numbers are, they all correspond. So in this one we had a -31, that's fine. That's what C is, it's -31. Again, we do use the signs, so this is a -1x squared minus 6x, so that's a -6 minus 7. I am using those signs. All right, last couple here. A is 1, B is 8, C is -8. I'm sorry, negative. C is 18. Making things up. All right, last two. A is -1, B is +6, C is -13. All right, and for our last one, A is -1, B is +6, C is -11. Okay, So now that we are familiar with or reminded how to find the A, B, and C values from standard form, we are going to do some guided practice. And the first thing we're going to do here is we're just going to find the first point of the vertex from standard form. So in number 1, we are looking at an equation in standard form. And so we know we will be using our A, B, and C values. We know what those are. We just practiced finding those. I'm going to do some organization here in this space that I just put a big block. We are going to find the second point we're going to find the second point in that workspace, which we're not doing just quite yet, so you don't have to worry about that. Over on this side, we are going to find our first point. So this is our first point workspace. And then down here, this is just a way to organize this. I like to put my V equals because we're finding the vertex. All right, so here's what we're going to do for our first point. We're always going to start with a formula. And we've gone over this formula in class, but a reminder, the formula to find the first point in our vertex is the opposite of B over 2 times A. So it's the opposite of our B value. We call it negative B over 2A. All right, so we already know how to find A, B, and C because we went through and labeled. B is 16, but my formula calls for the opposite of 16. So the opposite of 16 is negative 16 over 2 times, and then my A value is negative 2. So that's what I'm plugging in there. Negative 16 over 2 times negative 2. When I work this out, 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. And negative 16 divided by negative 4 is positive 4. So my first point is a positive 4. Again, we'll worry about the second point in a little while. Let's try it again over here for number 2. I'm going to, again, leave some space to find my second point. And in my workspace for my first point, I'm going to write my formula. And so the question is, what are we going to plug in on top? The opposite of positive 16 is negative 16. Over 2 times our A value, what should we plug in to this space right here? It should be a 2. So we'll work that out. Negative 16 over 2 times 2 is 4. And negative 16 divided by 4 is negative 4. That's our first term in our vertex. We'll keep practicing this. Okay, sometimes we have missing terms. So if there's nothing next to an x, we know that it's a 1. So in this case, our A is negative 1. We have B is negative 4. And there's nothing here for C. We can write plus 0 as a placeholder if that helps. But there's nothing there. That's very different than when there's nothing next to an x, because that means there's really still just one x. But if there's nothing at all, that's a 0. All right, so let's build out our equation. We have, I know I'm trying to find my vertex. We're using negative b over 2 times a. And so we're saying the opposite of my b value. So the opposite of negative 4 is 4. over 2 times my a value, which is negative 1. So that gives me 4 over negative 2. And when we divide that, 4 divided by negative 2 is another way we can read that. We get negative 2. So that's the first point in my vertex. Now we're not going to do all 8 of these, but I'll do a couple more because we'll get to continue practicing it when we go to find our second point as well. So as we're building this out, I know my vertex is going to be 2 points. I know that the formula to find the first point in my vertex is negative b over 2 times a. We're going to look over here and indicate a is negative 2, b is 8, c is negative 12. And if you've noticed, we haven't really used our c value at all. It's not part of this formula. And one of the questions in class that I got a lot was, well, what does the c tell us? The c is actually, it can actually be used from standard form for our y-intercept. It means if we made x's zeros, it would multiply and cancel everything out to just give us zeros, and we would be left with the c value by itself. So the c tells us from standard form what our y-intercept is. But you don't have to worry about that because we're working on finding the vertex right now. So we're going to plug in the opposite of 8 is negative 8 over 2 times whatever my a value is, highlighted in red there, a negative 2. Negative 8 over, I'm going to work out 2 times negative 2. So I'm working these out. 2 times negative 2, I'm going to write it down here, is negative 4. And then when I divide those, I get positive 2. Negative 8 divided by negative 4 is a positive 2. So that's how we find the first point in our vertex. I'll do just a couple more. We'll take a look at numbers 7 and 8. So I'm organizing my work. I know that my vertex has a point there. I'm saying negative b over 2 times a. I'm going to replace, so I have a is 1, b is negative 2, and c is 4. It's my a, b, and c. So we're saying the opposite of b, the opposite of negative 2 is positive 2 over 2 times whatever my a value is. In this case, it's 1. And that doesn't make 21, that makes 2 times 1. So we get 2 over 2 times 1, which is 2. And when we reduce those, or divide, 2 divided by 2 gives us 1. So the first point in my vertex is a 1. All right, let's do one more of these and then we'll look at how we find our second point. Negative b over 2a, v equals some number and some other number. My first term, a equals negative 1, b equals negative 4, and c equals negative 2. So we're saying the opposite of b, the opposite of negative 4, is positive 4 over 2 times our a value, which is negative 1. So that's 4 over negative 2. And 4 divided by negative 2 is negative 2. So that's the first point in my vertex.